The journey of life is different for everyone. As much as you can walk through the same paths and walk on those same paths and step into each of the same footsteps as countless others have been before you, with all the probabilities of everything that have happened throughout the entire universe, you're not going to live the same life as someone else. In one day, in one decision, in one way or another, you will have a unique way through your journey of life. And the overall idea and the concept of that might just be the most fascinating thing and the most fascinating understanding of our time. Well, let's go back to how life starts for everyone. And in this specific video, I'm looking at humans. We have a bunch of documentaries that go through the history of everything for that. First off, I'm not going into numbers, but the mere reason and the mere event of you coming into this life, do you know how rare that is? You, yes, you were chosen. You might not be able to have chosen where. You can't really choose where you're from. You can't choose your parents. You can't choose a bunch of factors for your life. But you were chosen to live. First off, that's one. Then you, over the years, have to learn what life is and how to live. And that's something that doesn't just stop at any time. That's an ever-going and an everlasting process. Those first few years, you really don't know how to talk, you don't know how to walk. You have to be shown how to live. Through your parents, through other people raising you, through your family, through an endless number of people and opportunities, and I'm not going to say videos, but videos and movies. Nowadays with technology, I don't want to go deep into the whole iPad kid thing. I don't want to raise a kid that way. But that's how some people now are raised through life. Then school starts. School is a weird time. It at many times feels like the end-all be-all, but it isn't. You have all these anxieties of how you appear, what level you are in the social hierarchy, where you stand in that regard, who are you associated with, who are members of your clique. And don't worry, this isn't just something, again, that happens in school as you go throughout school. This is, again, an everlasting process that starts again and again throughout your life's journey. And then as you get older through school, the subjects can get harder. They can be more individualized. You decide on a path you want to go to. And again, this isn't set in stone. Nothing is set in stone. And sooner or later, whether you get a degree of some sort, whether it be you keep it at high school, whether you go off to a university, whether you go off to some program and you work on some program, you're learning, and you are constantly learning. Every day you are learning. And you do that for however many years that you are here. And when it's all said and done, you end up the same way that everyone else does. It might not be technically in the same fashion, but you become one with the soil of this planet. And that is happening, and those lives are starting every single second of every single day. People are coming in, people are going out, and there are so many realms that you will get to experience. I'm not going to get to all of them in this video, I promise you that. I just want to get that off of my chest. What actually inspired me to talk about this is a few days ago. A few days ago, two girls from my high school in my grade were proposed to. They became engaged. It was really weird. They were both in the same friend group. They both happened on the same day. They were in the popular group, if you were wondering, and if you wanted to know why and know what group they were in. And one of them actually was engaged and was proposed to by someone who was also in our grade. They had been friends for forever, and he finally did it. And just the notion of that, as much as I don't even talk to those people anymore, I never really was I wasn't in the same standing, you could say, of them. It makes you think about life and how we're all playing and we're all watching it come to us, or we're forcing it down our own individual paths. You know, on the opposite side, I don't want to go too deep into how my life works. That's not what this video is about. This video is about how the journey of life differs for everybody. We're talking social standings. From what I can remember throughout middle school and high school, and this is how I feel like a lot of people are to a degree, but it's the extremes where we might aspire to be like someone or a group of people that can get us to feel insecure about ourselves. I wasn't necessarily an outcast. I wasn't necessarily the most popular kid in school. The way I look at it, if you don't know, my name is Kyle. I was the one Kyle in my entire grade. More often than not, because of my name, because of that individual part of your life, because you're going to be named something. You will be named maybe after a person, maybe after a place. You might not quite know the significance of your name, but your parents will name you. You will be named whatever you're named. The way I looked at life, and when I think back to those years, as much as I'm a little bit removed from them, but not too far removed. I only graduated college a few years ago. More often than not, I've been the only person that's named Kyle in whatever setting I'm in. And throughout school and throughout life, I feel like I've been in a spot where I'm not disliked by anybody. I'm not the most popular person. More often than not, I'm there. And more often than not, I've come to learn that people, and this is for anyone, people encourage and love your company. I don't know what you've gone through. I don't know what you've experienced. I don't know if you've been exactly in my footsteps or you've gone the complete different track and on that different path. More often than not, I'd say that people appreciate you, whether it be your immediate family, whether it be the people you come in contact with over the years. And on the topic of people, you will meet so many different people over the course of your life, and more often than not, I'd say 90 to 95% of them, we don't necessarily think of it in the moment, but it's true. They're there for a part of your life, but they're not there for your full life's journey. It could be school. I was talking about how two girls from my grade recently got proposed to. I don't really talk to them anymore. I heard about it. And it's cool to hear about, and it's cool to think about, but I don't really interact with them. I went off to college. I met a bunch of new people. I talked to a fair amount of them still to this day. I keep in touch to some degree. But of the thousands of students, Ithaca, not exactly, again, I went to Ithaca College. It's not exactly the biggest school, but there were a couple thousand students. I don't know how many of them I think of to this day. A lot of them are off in their own individual worlds. And that's the thing. Once we get out into the world, anything can happen. I've known people who have moved across the country. In my case, I've moved to Kansas and back twice, and I'm from the Northeast. I've known people who have stayed right in where I've been from. They've stayed here for their entire life. Yes, they went off to school, and yes, they might have been somewhere else when they went to school, but they're still here. And I've known people and known of people who are either engaged or married. And the whole thing about life that you will deal with is relationships at one point or another. Again, I feel like there's so many different ways I can go. I'm just trying to be honest. Even if it's a simple gloss over everything. You come across so many different people in your life. Again, I mentioned that more often than not, most of them are only there for some time. They're not there for the full time, but there is someone, and there will be people who are there for your entire life's journey, your entire journey. There are people who you remember from specific events. There are nights where you go out, and I'm saying this as a guy who's been to clubs and whatnot. There are people that you will see one specific night or one specific day, and you might never see them again, and you might think about them, but you go on with your life and they go on with theirs without your involvement. You know, I still remember, I've seen now and from movies and whatnot, you know, airports are another different, and that's a fascinating way to look at life. Look at life through an airport. Most of the people aren't, depending on where they're from, there because they live there. They're there because they're going somewhere else. And you could meet so many different people in that simple few hours that you're there, and then they go off on their different ways. Especially from a relationship perspective. I remember there was this one time I was in the airport. I think my family and I were going back from Florida, and it's kind of cliche or whatnot, but there was a girl who wore like a yellow, like I think she was a corduroy yellow jacket, and I remember my head looking at her, I'm like, oh my god, like she looks good. Okay, I could say that. Yeah, I'm not gonna die because I can admit that. And then one day that day, eventually she went down towards her terminal. Never saw her again. As many times as I'm sure that you could remember a moment in time like that, a day like that, an event like that, there are countless numbers of people who have looked at you that same way. You know, you might step out on your worst day. You might step out, you don't shave, your hair is all frizzed up and whatnot, you don't feel good, you just get outside to get outside. Or in some cases, you might be on vacation with your family and you're focused on your family, spending time with them. That's how you should be. That should be at the top of your list in your journey of life. And you're not thinking about that whatsoever. There are people who will get a glance of you. And as much as I've talked about that recent experience where I still remember it to this day, they will hold that memory for the rest of their lives. It's so fascinating. It's fascinating at that. There are times where, again, this is another random story that I've had, where people that you know and you still keep in touch with to this day will do something that they aren't entirely aware of around you or to you, that you will remember for the rest of your life, and they don't even have a clue that they did that. One time up at school, I was at a house party for Halloween, and one of my friends, I'm sorry, I don't know why I blanked on that. I consider her a friend. Well, the story kind of makes things interesting. She saw me at this party. This was at a time when I didn't really go out too much. I believe I was a junior. Yes, this was my junior year. She was a year below me. And keep in mind, again, I don't really go out, but I started to do it here. She saw me. We looked at each other across this room. We were in these townhouse apartments. She lost her mind. She was happy to see me, but she came over to me and then she leaned into my ear and she told me verbatim, "I am so drunk right now." Most of the time, and I'd say 95 plus or minus a few percentage points, if we're going for margin of error, I'm stone cold sober. Stone cold sober. It's not really been my thing. I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't do a lot of that stuff. I don't preach about it to everybody. I think that in some cases that isn't at the forefront. And another thing to think about, in your life you will be indoctrinated and you will see so many different lifestyles. More often than not, you pick and choose little parts from them and implement them into your life. But she was very inebriated. And after she told me that, I just kind of smiled. I was laughing to myself, kind of shook my head. Not in a way where I was mad at her for doing that, because I've come at this point, again, as someone who doesn't really do that, more often than not, and this is how you will be, not just when you're out with friends, not just if you're not partaking in that, but more often than not, people will be living their own way. You might not like how they live their own way, but at the end of the day, if they're living that way, they're living that way. You can't really impact, unless there are major reasons as for why, that you stop that. But I remember, I forget the better part of the conversation that I had with this girl. I think the main thing was, it was a party. I was wearing my costume for this party around Halloween. Was a picture of myself taped to my chest, and I was wearing that same outfit. That was my costume. As low effort as can be, I did it 2 years in a row up at school, and it worked both times. But this girl was being whisked away by one of her other friends as he was trying to make sure she was fine, because again, she was really, really inebriated. And as she was being whisked away, I don't know what came in her mind, I don't know how this came about, but she booped my nose. She went boop, and then left. You might not know, if you are in those positions, the times when that happens. But that sparked for me many months where I had feelings for her. I never confessed. If she's watching this video right now, I'm sorry that this is how you hear about it. But I, partially due to that interaction, stressed out way too much for a while. And it was also like, the vibes were kind of weird, where she was with someone at the time, and there were times where I would be out and she would be there, and you know, she was, I can't even really tell you if flirting or not, because that's another thing with life when relationships come up. That's something where you kind of can learn it over time, or in some cases you don't really learn it in general. Look at me. And, you know, there were times where I was like, okay, I don't really know how to go about this, partially because in those settings like that, I'm very mentally locked in just with the fact I'm being there and how there's loud music and how there's a lot of people, and that's already getting me on edge. I remember there was one night where that happened, and, you know, one of my friends was like, yo, like, who is she? And I was like, yo, it's like, you know, it's a friend, done clubs with her. But I graduated. She graduated. She's actually doing work for her master's right now. That was, from what I had heard, a really bad night for her with how it ended, because, again, she drank a lot, and more often than not, when you drink a lot, the night doesn't end too well for you. But I can assure you, there's a near 100% chance she has no memory of doing that to me. But I have that memory ingrained in my mind. That's the power of the opportunity that the journey of life can bring you. And again, I can't really get into everything in one video. Let's fast forward a few years, and let's fast forward many years, because again, life doesn't have a certain age where you have to do X thing. Yes, you can be helped along the way in your early stages of life, but everyone's path is different. And in some cases, I say some because I know the birth rates over the years haven't necessarily been surging through the roof here in the US. It's varied from time to time, maybe from a lot of social media and a lot of societal studies and whatnot, and perceptions of everything have differed with the overall invention of this massive social media industry and the platform and how you could post about whatever you're doing constantly. More often than not, depending on how people are, you will become a parent. And now the rest of your life is kind of flipped, because you have been, for however long you've been living, trying to navigate through your own life's journey and how to get to where you want to be, how to get and improve in other places. But now it flips, because now on top of you doing your own path and learning your own path, you are helping someone else figure out their own path over the years. You are having to raise another being, another human being, and you are now providing support for them, whether it be financially, whether it be presentingly, just by the fact of being there for whatever clubs or events they take part in and for the big moments in their life. That's what you're doing. On top of you still trying to navigate how your life works to begin with. And that can be very taxing, and that's why they say it's not for everyone. There's a fine line too with that, because you want to help them as much as you can, because you want the best for your kid or your kids. But the silver lining is they also have to learn themselves. They also have to make the decisions for themselves. And there are times where you can feel like you're stepping in and you can't really touch that. And you're trying to do it for, again, the best interests and your best interests for what their life should be. Well, their life is their life. And they're the ones who, at the end of the day, because there will be a time where you pass on, will have to decide what their lives are and what their lives will be. With however many people, I'm not even going to look up how many people are on this planet right now. How many people you've crossed paths with, how many people you've maybe had like a split second of eye contact with, whether you looked away from them because they were looking at you, or whether you had a sustained eye contact and maybe a courtesy smile, or whether you find the love of your life. You have to understand that the journey of life is, by all means, as individual as it gets. You can follow the same paths, you can find the same footsteps of other people, but at the end of the day, you're making your journey yours. And that can be very tough to stomach. But when you look at the grand scheme of how the universe is, it shouldn't be tough to stomach. It should be inviting for you to experience everything that there is for your journey and for life that there is to offer. Bonus content. I really can look at this and talk about this for a long time. It really hit me today. It was really funny. I didn't want to record today. I had done a fair amount and I was dehydrated, and what really got me up and going, I drank 2 full liters of water. And I'm like, wow, my mind is working. Everything is actually flowing how it's supposed to flow. And yeah, and also with this shirt, not today. Look at that. Look at that. That was how I felt about recording not even an hour ago. Another idea I had in mind was talking about how life and how your mind can work against you in the ideas of societal pressures and whatnot. And even if you're just dehydrated, your mind is telling you what it needs, and how more often than not, when your body is telling you something is wrong, you can and need to fix it. But this life topic kind of took priority. It took priority. It can be a prioritative decision for me to talk about this. But life is so cool. Life is so cool. I am lying back because my back hurts. Nah, just kidding. Life is amazing. Go live it, please. Bye now.